So when covering the 49ers, some days are quiet, some days the news hits you just like the wind and the fog whipping over Corona Heights. Today was one such day. George Kittle re-signs for the most money ever for a tight end at about 5 a.m. And then DJ Humphries, the former Pro Bowl left tackle, joins the 49ers to help protect Brock Purdy. He's going to be in the mix to be the swing tackle for San Francisco. But we've got to focus on George Kittle because that relates directly to Brock Purdy. These two are obviously tied at the hip on the field. Purdy to Kittle against the New England Patriots against triple coverage. That's a highlight I've seen a few times today. And then the one I always think of is Purdy to Kittle against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a superstar play on both ends. Purdy with the off-schedule scramble and the throw, and then George Kittle with a fantastic toe-tap catch. It was a superstar type of win for the 49ers in Tampa Bay. And they're going to need more of that moving forward, combined with the depth that they hope that their draft class has been able to build them. But they've got George Kittle now locked down for multiple years. If he and Purdy are tied together at the hip on the football field, well, they need to be tied together at the hip contractually as well. And that is the 49ers' plan. Because if you look at everything, all the house cleaning that they did this offseason of players who were not A-list talents, the goal was to clear the brush so that the big money could be reallocated to the true A-list pieces. George Kittle is a true A-list piece. He's now going to be making $19.1 million a year. Brock Purdy is a true A-list piece. This debate about whether or not his contract is going to be worth $50 million annually is completely ridiculous. Those of us who have been paying attention know that it will be. And that's going to be a huge expenditure that pushes the 49ers back up into the top 5 of annual cash spend. So hopefully at this point, it all makes sense. The 49ers were looking to renovate the defense this year because it couldn't get any worse than it was last year. So they decided to cut salary there. There was a point last season, by the way, when the Rams came to Levi's Stadium, and I was talking to their radio announcer, JB Long, on the sideline before the game, and he pointed out to me that the Rams had the lowest defensive cash spend in all of football. This was after the big rookie renovation that the Rams did last year, which the 49ers are now emulating. So we're seeing something similar out of the 49ers this year, a much lower defensive cash spend for a younger and hungrier defense this year, but they're pumping money into that offense, as they should, because it was the defense that was the big problem of this football team last year. Offensive side of the ball, they got to get healthier, but they also have to reward the A-list pillars. Purdy and Kittle are two of those A-list pillars. Kittle is rewarded first. Now we wait for Brock Purdy. Other news today, Nick Emmanwori. This is one of the defensive backs whom we talked about a lot heading into the draft because he was a really good prospect out of South Carolina. One of the athletic freaks in this draft. Well, he's with the Seattle Seahawks now. Some intriguing drafts around the NFC West. Nick Emmanwori had this to say to the Seattle media.
Really important, but if you had to choose between an interception and just laying a guy out on third down, what would you take?
Honestly, it depends what team we're playing. If we're playing the Niners, I'll lay a dude out. But any other team, I'll probably get an interception. I'll get an interception though. But honestly, man, I kind of like both. Getting an interception is awesome because I like to run it back for touchdowns. But laying the dude out, like taking his soul, making him feel it, that also feels good too. So.
Oh, you just made more fans out here when you specified the 49ers. You know your audience, Nick. They are going to love you, my friend.
So that might endear Emmanwori to Seahawks fans, but it certainly won't endear him to 49ers fans. I'm already looking forward to the next chapter of this rivalry because the Rams have gone on this youth movement. Now they've got some characters on their team. I know Puka Nacua has been talking about Brock Purdy's money. That's going to be interesting next year. I know Jared Verse is a guy that loves to get the fans going. Well, in Seattle, it sounds like Nick Emmanwori is a guy who, at the very least, knows his audience. His audience isn't 49ers fans. Maybe that could add even more spice to the rivalry. We could walk around the bend here at Corona Heights today. You cannot see the Pacific Ocean because the fog is coming in. This part of Corona Heights is really windy if you're on the ocean side. You could always step into here and the wind dies down. This is why, though, we have the microphone. Busy day. Brock Purdy's contract coming up next. I talked about everything on KNBR.
After a whole lot of joking around in that last segment, it is our pleasure to welcome in from the San Francisco Standard, the one and only David Lombardi, who joins us courtesy of the UMA guest line to help us wrap up a Tuesday. David, appreciate you. What's going on?
Hey guys, how are you? Sorry I'm a little late. Phone was on silent in my back pocket. I didn't realize it was 1:15 yet. I'm embarrassed, but I'm here now.
Hey, you know what? It's all good. Sometimes we got to just throw the phone in the trash anyway. It's like what I want to do after the show for the next 2 hours anyway. So, in all seriousness, the big news of today is George Kittle signing the extension, not having this be something that drags on deep into the offseason. So, just your general reaction to it, the contract itself, getting money that's a little bit of a tick higher than Trey McBride, who also had a great season for the Cardinals last year, and just kind of the message it sends from the organization as a whole.
Well, I don't think this deal was hard to do. I think that we know that Kittle's the best tight end in the league. We know how important he is to Brock Purdy. And I think that the 49ers were, and Kittle especially, was waiting for Trey McBride to sign his contract because he knew that as the top tight end in the league, he would just be able to one-up that deal. And he did by $100,000 a year, $19.1 million versus 19. It was 4 years, 76 for McBride, 4 years, 76.4 for George Kittle. He was entering the lame duck year of the contract that he signed in 2020, and that was the harder one to do because that one really shattered the ceiling for tight ends. I think that the high water mark before Kittle signed that one in 2020 was about $12 million a year, and he got it all the way up to $15 million a year, and it was a protracted negotiation there back in 2020. This time they got it done 4 months earlier because he had already shattered through that ceiling a half decade ago, right? So the 49ers and Kittle were always on path to get this done. And, their philosophy, if you're asking about their message, is pay the A-list core, the foundational pillars of this team. Kittle's one of them. Last offseason, McCaffrey and Trent Williams were two other foundational pillars. Look at Brock Purdy. He's going to be paid this offseason as well. And they're trying to renovate around those pillars. So that's what this draft this past weekend was about. But the A-list guys who are performing at an A-list level are going to get their money before their lame duck years start. And that was the case with Kittle, and it's going to happen with Brock Purdy at some point this offseason.
And richly deserving. And George showed a lot of leadership last year in a hard year. I think he showed exactly who he is, the way he played, the way he blocked, the way he did everything. So congratulations to him. The Niners do have some money in the tight end room because they did sign Luke Farrell this offseason, a contract that kind of, rolled some eyes, raised some eyebrows, 3-year deal at 15.75. So just talk about, and George is obviously one of the best inline blocking tight ends in football. But I think Luke Farrell, in some regards, I'm not going to say he's Kittle, David, but man, I'm not sure he run blocks as well, probably even, but I think his pass protection, fanning out like a tackle, is right. It may be better than George. So as you wait for Ayuk to come back as your ex-receiver, he may not start the year on time with the ACL, MCL, and others. Demarcus Robinson, as you've been reporting, may face a league suspension for the driving under the influence as a Ram. You got Ricky, you got Juwan Jennings, you got some young guys. They drafted Watkins. Do you see them playing, and they got Juszczyk back, but more 12 personnel where you got double tight ends on the field, and it wouldn't really be 12 because Luke would be your tight end, and they could use George more as a slot wide receiver, line him up anywhere and throw more passes to him.
Yeah, well, Kyle Shanahan has hinted at that. He said that Luke Farrell is such a good pass blocker that it should allow George Kittle to be deployed on pass patterns more often instead of being in pass protection. Now, that didn't happen an excessive amount last year. I think it was 52, 53 snaps. But when Kittle is one of the most efficient pass catchers in the league, and I'm not just talking tight ends, I'm talking receivers too. I mean, the yards per route run, he's always blown tight ends away. We're comparing him to some of the top wideouts in the game. So when he's giving you 3 yards per route run, I think it was like 2.6 or 2.7 last year, which is an elite number. You just do the math in your head. If he's pass blocking 50 times, then you're giving up potential efficiencies. Multiply 50 times 2.7. It's going to be somewhere between 100 and 150 yards left on the table over the course of the season. And that can make the difference in some of these close games. So, yes, I do think the 49ers would love if Luke Farrell could handle some of the pass blocking duties that Kittle provides as really a sixth offensive lineman, and let Kittle do, I don't want to say do what he does best, because he does the blocking really well too, but let Kittle do what he's truly, truly special at, and that is running routes with 4.5 speed at 250 plus pounds. There's really nobody else in the league that's doing that at his weight, and that's made him a unique player that's now signed his third contract.
Talking to David Lombardi here from the SF Standard. Great to have him join us. And, you mentioned the confidence that this deal would get done with George Kittle. Do you think that confidence might have guided them toward their draft approach and the way they focused on defense in the first 5 rounds? Like, I know it's not as simple as, it's our pick and we're going to take a cornerback, so let's go to the list and go to the best corners available. But do you think just kind of knowing that Kittle was likely here to stay might have impacted the fact that they were like, okay, we're going to really focus on the defensive side of the ball, which had a lot of holes in it last year?
Well, if you look up and down the roster, the only position that doesn't have a rookie that has joined over the past few days is tight end. There's 17 rookies on this team now that joined either through the draft or undrafted free agency, 11 plus 6. And tight end is the one position they didn't touch at all. So I think that there always was a lot of confidence that Kittle was going to be around for the long term. I mean, they haven't been shy about saying that. Kittle hasn't been shy about saying that he wants to be around. This wasn't a hard deal to do. You looked at McBride's number and you said Kittle's going to be somewhere between 19 and 20 million per year. He's at 19.1 million per year. They get it done in April, way ahead of all these other long negotiations that they've had before. But in general, zooming out and looking at the status of the 49ers, the defense was terrible last year. They had to strip the defense down to the studs and rebuild it this offseason. And the offense was actually okay last season. Nothing was great on the 49ers last year, but if you looked at what was in more acute need of a renovation, getting hungrier, younger, healthier players in there, it was the defensive side of the ball. It wasn't where George Kittle, Brock Purdy, and the offense. So that's been the focus of the offseason through the draft, has been defense. And offense, they're just hoping that guys come back healthy. If McCaffrey's healthy, if Trent Williams is healthy, all of a sudden this looks a whole lot different than last season.
Talking to David Lombardi, and it appears that Greg Papa lost a little Wi-Fi on us, so we'll work on getting the connection back with him here shortly. But I saw you put this out on your social media as well. Zane Gonzalez, the hero for Washington with the doink that ended up working out and getting them past Tampa Bay. He ends up getting released, and then they go for Matt Gay over there in the nation's capital. This is someone that's been in the 49ers kicking competition rotation before. Do you forecast this as someone that could possibly get brought back in to challenge Jake Moody come September?
Yeah, I think they're going to make a decision within the next couple of weeks. They've got this guy named Kenny Almendarez, who was the Groza Award winner that goes to the best kicker in college football. He's coming in for a tryout during the rookie minicamp. It's not this week, but the next. So they're going to have a chance to see him. He just posted something on social media. This guy Almendarez nailing a 63-yard field goal in practice. So, and Groza Award winner, there's something to be said about that. The issue is, and we know they're bringing somebody in, right, to be competition for Moody.
Right.
But the issue is that Moody was basically Almendarez in college. Moody was the best kicker in college football. The thing that's hard to project is how will these guys fare once they kick in the NFL. And I think that's why the 49ers might want to bring a veteran in for this. And, yes, somebody like Zane Gonzalez would be a potential option. The best veteran kicker available right now, at least as far as performance over the past couple of years, has been Nick Folk. He's older. He's like 40 or 41. And I'm not sure if he would be willing to sign with the 49ers to be in a competition, given how well he has kicked and, just given the stature of his career. But I'm sure that the 49ers will go through as many options as possible, but you probably need to have somebody in there by that first OTA practice, because I think you would like to commence the off-season competition by then.
Yeah, no question about it. As far as just the draft and everything that went down this past weekend, from Michael Williams all the way to their 11th and final pick and the undrafted free agents that they signed, you mentioned 17 total for the rookies. How'd you just kind of look at the picture as a whole with the draft and also with some of these guys in terms of NFL readiness? I mean, the reason that the NFL readiness element is so intriguing to me is because you look at this last year's rookie class, and John Lynch actually did a pretty great job with it, even in a season in which they struggled. But because of all the circumstances that went down with the 49ers, as you know very well, being right in it with the team, a lot of these guys like your Renardo Greens, your Dominic Pooneys, your Malik Mustafas had to get more playing time and starting reps than they probably would have expected right away.
Yeah, I think in 2024, the 49ers' hope was that they could run it back with some veterans at top, and some of the rookies would just have a chance to get their feet wet, but really wouldn't be thrust into full-time action. But what happened is that a lot of guys were thrust into full-time action. They did handle it remarkably well. So even though the team as a whole didn't perform well, they finished 6-11. That set things up nicely for 2025. Now, the difference between the initial outlook for this 2025 draft class versus last year is now the 49ers are entering the season knowing that these players are going to have to take starting roles. The Rams underwent what's now become like a famous youth movement last year. And, one of the reasons the 49ers fans are so familiar with it is because it's very clear that the 49ers are copying big-time elements of that youth movement. The Rams drafted Verse and Fisk in the first and second rounds, defensive end, defensive tackle, just like the 49ers. But the Rams, despite the fact that they just loaded that roster up with rookies last year, only started 3 on the defense. And I say only because the 49ers might start as many as 5 rookies on defense this year. 3 on the defensive line alone, with Michael Williams, Alfred Collins, and C.J. West. So it is an aggressive swing for the 49ers, but I think that they don't have a whole lot to lose because the defense, and especially the defensive line and the run defense, was terrible last year. So there really is no room to get worse in a lot of these ways, right? I think that's what I felt. Okay, great defensive line draft class, and already bottom barrel run defense last year. Why not make this the year that we renovate, because there is nowhere to go but up.
David Lombardi here with us from the SF Standard. A few more minutes, offering a lot of great insight on some 49ers offseason news. And, of course, the big one today, George Kittle, 4 years, $76.4 million extension. Another piece of news over the weekend that wasn't maybe at the top of the list because this player is no longer a 49er, but certainly something that was interesting was Dre Greenlaw suffering a serious quad injury and now could miss substantial time for his new team in the Denver Broncos. Now, I know that probably for a lot of the fans, and I'd say a large chunk of the locker room, was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, goodbyes that was tough to say to for the 49ers in this offseason. But does getting news like that, and not that it has anything to do with Dre's work ethic or who he is as a player, but just your reaction to that news, does it kind of make you think that maybe it was the best decision to move on from Dre Greenlaw in this offseason and not pay him quite the money that he ended up getting from Denver?
Well, it's the fear of what happened, or stuff that would be related to what happened injury-wise, is what prevented the 49ers from putting on the full court press throughout the entire process with Dre Greenlaw. They're really stuck in between a rock and a hard place there because they cared so much about this player. He was such a good player when he's healthy, and there's so much shared history there that obviously they were very interested in keeping him in the building. And you look at the game against the Rams when he came back over the course of that first half. My goodness, that was one of the most impressive halves that we've seen from a linebacker, right? But he also only lasted a half, and he only played, 35 snaps on the whole season. So they had to balance these two things, and it put them in this really tough spot. And the Broncos ended up pursuing him more aggressively. And, the 49ers are, we'll fly out to Texas. We'll see what Dre has to think. But they could have re-signed him earlier, right? And they didn't. And the reason they didn't is because there was that fear of Greenlaw not carrying good availability moving forward. The evidence was there that this would be a possibility. So, yes, when something like this does happen, Does it validate that thinking? I suppose. But that was always the benefit, the cost-benefit analysis here for the 49ers, and ultimately it's why they didn't take that risk.
Last couple of minutes here with David Lombardi. We'll see if Greg Papa ends up reconnecting on his Wi-Fi, and if not, then it was all his ploy to just get you back another time. But, round 5, speaking of Dre Greenlaw, that's been the magical one for the 49ers, where they've made some great selections during this Lynch and Shanahan regime. Of course, George Kittle was a 5th-rounder himself. They got a couple of guys in round 5 this year. Jordan James, the running back out of Oregon, who's someone that Larry Krueger compared to kind of like an Elijah Mitchell type of player, and admired the fact that he was not a fumbler. The other one, speaking of injuries, Siegel from Kansas State, the safety, might have to get some playing time with Malik Mustafa maybe missing some time at the start of 2025 when he re-injured the ACL that he previously tore. So just kind of your reaction to maybe those two, if there's some more round 5 magic ahead, and just kind of if anyone you think could be a sleeper and a value pick from one of the 49ers 11 when you look at it and it's all said and done.
Well, Jordan James is interesting, and so is Corey Kiner, the undrafted free agent running back. They both have similar profiles in that the athletic scores, unlike a lot of these other 49ers draft picks, aren't very good, but extremely reliable backs in college. So, and guys who were able to generate, I think, more explosiveness than you would expect out of the athletic scores. So, Tariq Ahmad, as the 49ers director of player personnel, said that when that massive contingent of scouts and executives went to Eugene for Oregon's Pro Day, one of the things he noted was that Jordan James in person had a more impressive burst than on tape. So I thought that was really interesting that they really, football, you're going to try to quantify everything, right, with your R&D, but football is a sport where not everything can be quantified. It's not quite going to be baseball or even basketball. There's going to be that feel aspect to it, and it seems that with both of these running backs, they worked out Corey Kiner, the UDFA, in a private workout. With both of these running backs, they seem to have a really positive feel about their abilities. So we're going to keep an eye on that. I think reliability is something you definitely want at that number 3 back position. You've got the superstar in McCaffrey. You've got the explosive number 2 in Isaac Guerrero, who also can be lined up all over the field, has that receiver background. So then for your number 3 running back, you just want somebody who can pass protect, who doesn't fumble. He didn't fumble a single time in college. So I think that Jordan James fits that role really well. You talk about Marquise Siegel. What jumps out to me is for the second straight year, the 49ers have drafted the player who hit the fastest MPH, miles per hour, at the 5-yard mark of the 40 from the combine. In 2024 is Jacob Cowing. And this year was Marcus Siegel. He hit 15.7 miles per hour, 5 yards into the 40. So if you got the best burst out of anybody that was tested this year in Indianapolis, and yes, that should give him a chance to contribute right away. But, just in case he's not ready to go as a rookie, they also signed a couple safeties with starting experience, Jason Pinnock and Richie Grant. So it's a totally new look secondary for the 49ers this year at that safety spot outside of Jair Brown, if Malik Mustafa's not ready to go week 1. And they have a lot of options because what was a big problem last year was the backup safety spot early on before Talanoa Hufanga came back. There was that big 97-yard touchdown against Minnesota. So they're making sure that that's going to be shored up this season.
Yeah, a lot of new faces and a familiar face, but new in the sense of Robert Saleh was not there the last few years after he comes back. Really appreciate your time, David. I'm sorry that Papa's connection went out on us, but we'll get you soon, and we're going to have plenty of time to get into some 49ers over the offseason. So I'll keep reading you in the Standard, and always appreciate when you come by with us.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Appreciate it, man.